Hello guys, it's me, Greed here. It's been 8 years since Overwatch released, and that means 8 years of Widowmaker. That also means 8 years of patches and mistakes and learning lessons and things like that, and yet here we are in 2024, still complaining about the existence of Widowmaker. Rightfully so, that character is disgusting. The only people who do actually like Widowmaker are the beneficiaries of Widowmaker because they play her and they abuse the fact that she's broken. I don't believe there are any players in this game that enjoy Widowmaker's existence outside of the people that benefit from playing her. Therefore, she is broken by design, and I want to go over that. So, the first reason she's broken by design, and we'll get into why she's broken by environment too, but we'll start with design, is that she is a character, she's one of the only characters in the game that occupies space by not being inside of it. There are very, very few characters who do this. Ashe is a little similar, where they don't actually have to be inside of the space that they're occupying in order to make it dangerous enough for it to be considered their space, which means that if their space were to then get occupied by something, the Widowmaker is at still no risk of dying, yet is still outputting potential lethality on that space, which is a problem because it means that she has no risk when she's occupying space. This is obviously a huge problem in the fact that she essentially has infinite uptime at that point then, because obviously if you want to then go and contest her, you need to walk through her, contested space usually, unless you're pathing on an off angle or something, but even then, there's no way to know where the Widowmaker is, so if you just so happen to walk on the wrong angle and she shoots you and you die, well then you lost simply because you just got unlucky and you didn't predict the future, unfortunately, but that's just how it is sometimes. Anyway, another reason Widowmaker is so insanely broken is not just because she can one-shot or that she can occupy space without being inside of it, it's also that she is in 5v5. Now, she was obviously very broken in 6v6 as well, but she was broken for a slightly different reason. And the reason she's broken in 5v5 is because when the move to 5v5 happened, the off-tank's power was redistributed between the roles, and it was primarily the supports who won because the supports required extra power in order to not be permanently dead by dive heroes and flank heroes because they had no ability to peel for themselves or win those duels because they were too weak. And previously, in the 6v6 iteration of the game, the off tank was usually responsible for keeping their supports alive by going back and peeling dive and peeling flankers. However, when you make the move to 5v5 and you obviously delete the off-tank role, it means that there is no longer an off-tank to go back and do that peel. Therefore, it's the support's responsibility to do so, which makes it so anyone that is in the support's vicinity is technically absorbing amount of that power, at least partially, which makes Widowmaker even harder to dive because of the fact that the supports need the ability to keep their backline safe on their own. So anything that's inside of their backline on their team is obviously made just as safe as themselves because they're all near each other. This incentivizes the Widowmaker to take an even more passive playstyle of playing directly on top of her supports because it means she's more likely to get peeled from them, making it so that if you do wish to dive a Widowmaker, you are basically at minimum most of the time at a high level, taking you 1v2 or sometimes a 1v3, which is obviously not winnable. And even then, if you are diving a Widowmaker and potentially a 1v1 like a Genji or a Tracer, you tend to use more resources getting to that Widow and fighting that Widow than you win because Widowmaker's got the grapple for the escape and the supports to help the peel. Therefore, you're less likely to kill the Widowmaker by flanking her and diving her than you are by just mirroring the Widow duel, which incentivizes everyone to just pick poke heroes and play the Widowmaker mirror match because trying to dive it is pointless. You're technically losing if you dive the Widow, so it's pointless to do so. Plus, you have to remember that if a tank were to dive the Widowmaker, like a Winston or a D.Va, that Winston or D.Va no longer occupies the space that they were in, therefore no longer making that space their own, making it so that if a Winston or a D.Va were to dive a Widowmaker, it means that the team getting dove by the Winston or the D.Va then gets access to even more space because they're able to walk into that space that was previously occupied by the Winston or the D.Va, meaning that if you have a Widowmaker, you actually want them to get dove by something like a Winston or a D.Va or a Genji or a Tracer or something along those lines, because it means that any space that they could have been taking up otherwise is then given up by default, and the Widowmaker is likely to survive because of the fact that she's got such overpowered supports and she has grapple, making it that diving Widowmaker tends to be a losing situation situation for the players engaging in dive, which makes it the only actual viable way to deal with Widow is to make the problem worse by playing your own Widow, which means whichever team has the better Widowmaker tends to win. It's the reason why every single Widowmaker meta that's ever existed, people have done nothing but incessantly cry and bitch about it, because it's awful. 8 players, whereas previously in 6v6, 10 players weren't even playing the game. It was entirely decided by whose Widowmaker was a better player. That's not good gameplay design. I don't know what the devs are smoking when they're looking at Widowmaker being what she is and going, yeah, we're okay with that in our game. And the reason the devs are too scared to change it is they're too scared for their fan base of that hero to bitch and complain or potentially quit the game. Same reason we have Suzu still. Same reason we have Carry TP. Same reason we have Life Grip, Ilari Pylon, all of the bullshit. The ammo field, it's all bullshit. But we all have it because over the years, people have fallen in love with those characters and are used to them being the broken, overpowered mess that they are. So they don't want to change them because, for example, if a BAP player goes, I only play BAP because of the ammo, and then all of a sudden they don't have ammo anymore, well then you've just lost a potential Overwatch player, which is obviously a problem for them because they don't want to lose players. However, by letting those characters be as broken as they are obviously letting the player base slowly die off because nobody wants to play against it anymore. It's the reason you can go and play the Overwatch Classic mode and it's infinitely more fun than whatever we have now, because if you make a mistake, you are punished, and if you make a good play, you are rewarded. Unlike in Overwatch 2, where if you make a good play, there's a 50-50 chance it gets completely negated just because someone on playing support decided to, or if you make a mistake, there's like a 50-50 chance that you just don't get punished because someone on your team playing support decided that you shouldn't get punished. It's not a fun experience for anyone. The supports don't have any fun because they feel like they're playing Babysit Simulator. The DPS don't have any fun because they don't have any fucking player agency. And the tanks don't have any fun because they're so overpowered that they need to get focused all day in order to actually be kept at bay. Meaning that if they aren't getting permanently shot, they're running the lobby. And if they are getting permanently shot, they're basically AFK. Which means that because you have a situation like this, it incentivizes metas where sustain is very powerful. And when sustain is very powerful, it incentivizes things like poke to be strong, because the only way to get through something that's obviously with very high sustain, you need high burst damage. Who has high burst damage? Widowmaker has high burst damage. The sniper heroes like Widow, Hanzo, Ashe all have high burst damage. Sigma has high burst damage. All of the poke heroes have high burst damage. Therefore, when you create a meta that incentivizes people to play things like Widowmaker, you also incentivize people to play the sustain heroes to keep their Widowmaker uptime as high as possible. Meaning the only people that are actually playing the game are the supports that are hard pocketing their Widowmaker all day and the Widowmaker players. Meaning the tanks don't get to do anything, the other DPS doesn't get to do anything, and God forbid you want to play a character that doesn't work well with the Widowmaker because you're basically throwing the game then. If you don't give every resource to your Widow, then there is no point in doing anything because the whole matchup is entirely based on whether one Widowmaker gets more resources or is just so much better at the game that they're able to win with less resources in the first place. That is a huge problem. At that point, you're not even playing Overwatch. You may as well just go do something else, because if you queue up and your Widowmaker's cracked as hell and theirs is bad, well, get ready to go AFK for 8 minutes because you're just going to win that game. And God forbid you play a hero that, for example, loses to a Widowmaker. Like, what if you play Symmetra? Well, what then? You just, or May. What then? You just get fucked? You're just not allowed to play the game anymore? It's the same reason that tanks aren't having any fun. You want to play Reinhardt? I just finished my Reinhardt to top 500 thing. I did that, by the way. I one-tricked into top 500. I'll make a video about that. But I did it. Do you know what hero I played against all the time? Orisa. Do you know what hero I played against all the time? Mauga. Do you know how I beat those heroes as Reinhardt? I did nothing. I stood still, and I went AFK, and I did nothing. And I let them burn all of their resources and waste all of their time trying to kill me. And then when they had no resources left, I just pressed W on them, and they lost, because they didn't know how to play the character. Now imagine I played against an Orisa player, or a Mauga player, that understood that they only have to play reactionary and not proactively. A bit like a lot of these bullshit characters, where they're incentivized to play reactionary. And because they're incentivized to play reactionary, they've almost always got a resource advantage by default due to the fact they never have to use a resource outside of using it in response to something else, like a Widowmaker. If you never ever pressure a Widowmaker, she'll never ever use grapple. But if you ever do pressure Widowmaker, then she'll always have it, because there's no reason for her to use it outside of getting dove, which is why Grapple and Widowmaker are inherently broken characters by default, because there is no incentive to do anything other than AFK at the back of the map with her and one-tap people across the earth. The solution to fixing Widowmaker is by deleting her from the game. Every single aspect of her kit is broken by design and broken by environment. This hero is disgustingly overpowered, and I look forward to another season of Mauga, Orisa, Widow, and High Sustain, because that's all the Blizzard devs are capable of. Get ready for a Season 9 version 2, which is going to be Season 18, where they realize, holy shit, there's a lot of sustain and burst damage, let's buff everyone's health pool so that the DPS have 500 health. I can't wait for us to go back to 6v6. Overwatch Classic was the best mode ever made. I love 6v6. I want Overwatch 1 back. Overwatch 2 was one of the worst decisions ever made in gaming history. I love all of you. Goodbye. Have a good day. Mwah. I love all of you. Goodbye. Mwah. Goodbye.